one hand, content is struggling to monetize, but on the other, data seems to have no problem with that in terms of what it's able to offer up to advertisers. Saul, are you helping companies look at data opportunities to monetize?
Absolutely, but one size does not fit all. And there's not one monetization scheme that's going to fit for most businesses. There are different audiences that want to interact with you in different ways and want to pay indirectly or directly in different ways. So I think part of the complexity and the challenge to your previous question about best practices is you're going to have to be in different games, and you're going to have to provide different options to the end consumer. And our research that we've done most recently on several thousand consumers around the world, and a panel we did shows that they're pretty evenly split between they want to pay for it directly, they want to pay for it by watching advertising, or they want to pay for it in some kind of subscription model. But there are different groups that want to pay differently. Now, yeah, clearly there's a lot of value in data. We call it big data. We see that as a potential gold mine of the future, and we think we've only begun to scratch the surface there. A lot of this is about assembling the right data in one place, but first you've got to have a strategic vision of what you're trying to do and how you're going to use that data regardless of what tools you're going to use to get there. So lots of opportunity there. I think we're only scratching the surface, particularly in the area of predictive analytics, which we think increasingly is where people are going to go with this.
Clay, data, who's doing it well? What do you see coming down the pipe?
Almost nobody. So in the middle of the 90s, I was the chief technology officer of a design and marketing firm called Site Specific. And we built a media tracking database. People were starting to run banner ads, and we were sort of taking log file data from the client. We're taking the banner ads, we were linking them up. We're saying if you do this on the web and people do that on your site, you know what's working. And we thought we were going to make millions of dollars. And we were almost right. We made thousands of dollars, which is just like making millions of dollars, except for there being a lot less money. And the reason we only made thousands of dollars is that there was almost no interface in the traditional advertising market for people to ask themselves the question, can you tell me right away what's not working? Because there was no incentive to know that. If you could sign up to just give people good news, right, you could build a business on that. But what we universally found is that when you measure this, the first thing you were able to tell people with any certainty is thing X that your CEO thinks is brilliant, that thing is not working. So as much as people on our side of the table, both literally and figuratively, see the value of big data, I think the problem in using it in any kind of environment, really marketing or anything else, is are you set up organizationally to get incontrovertible evidence that things people in your organization thought were a good idea are actually bad ideas? And an organization that can do that can make use of this data, and an organization that can't do that, they could have the most beautifully personalized, functional data delivered to them daily, and it will create no net value.
Well, I worked in the magazine business in the 80s and the 90s, and I knew full well how you went into a research project whose ultimate goal was always to prove that the magazine was number one.
Right.
So,
right.
But
it's easy because then you can do right to left planning. You start with the answer, and then you get the data you need to.
But on the other hand, what about things like the walled garden approach? I mean, what if you've got, what if you're willing to allow, at least one part of your company to fail based on what the data is telling you? Is that a good way to go?
I mean, yeah,
from whose perspective?
Well, right. Well, so this is the problem, right? Is bureaucracy has reversed the second law of thermodynamics. It's actually easier to start a project than it is to end it. And so the key really is to be able to do two things. One is exactly what you said, which is this project is clear enough that if it works, we'll double down, and if it fails, we're going to close it down. When you look at companies that have multiple irons in the fire at the same time, e.g. Amazon and Google, they do a lot of that. But the second thing you have to do is exactly what Saul said, which is you cannot make it a career-limiting move to have given your all on an experiment that didn't work out, because then it's not an experiment anymore. Then it is simply something you have to cling to in order to get job security. And if somebody who fails and learns in your company isn't seen as having an advantage over someone who succeeds with something you already knew worked, you won't be the kind of company that can take advantage of learning. Because learning will equate with job-limiting choice. And the people who will get bundled into experimental things are really the people they're like the people who wore the red shirts on Star Trek, right? Don't go down to the planet if you're wearing a red shirt.